Last year, my wife and I had a 45-minute argument about a sponge. Not money, not our marriage, not our adult daughter who was upstairs pretending not to hear us. A sponge, whether it belonged on the left side of the sink or the right. And somewhere around minute 30, standing in that kitchen with my heart pounding like I was in physical danger, a single thought cut through all the noise. There is no possible way this is about the sponge. I didn't know it yet, but that thought was the beginning of understanding 20 years of chaos. Because once I pulled on that thread, I discovered something that changed how I saw every fight we'd ever had. My family had been having one argument for 2 decades. We'd just been dressing it up in different costumes. Tonight, I'm going to show you what that argument actually was. And I'd bet almost anything your family is having the same one. This is Entangled in Chaos. Understand the chaos, break the pattern. Let me take you back to an ordinary Sunday evening, because the most revealing arguments never happen during a crisis. They happen when nothing is wrong. That's the first clue, by the way. Hold on to it. Dinner was over. It had actually been a good dinner, one of the rare ones. Our daughter, grown now but living with us again for a while, had told a story that made her mother laugh so hard she had to put her fork down. For a few minutes, the kitchen felt like the family I'd always imagined. We were underneath everything. Then dinner ended, and I did what I always did. I stacked the plates, carried them to the sink, and left them there. I was going to wash them after my walk. I always washed them after my walk. This was not new information to anyone in the house. I was reaching for my jacket when my wife said it. 6 words, delivered in a tone I can only describe as preloaded. So you're just leaving those there. Now I want you to notice what my body did before my mind did anything at all. My shoulders came up, my jaw set. My hands actually stopped moving, the way you freeze when you hear a branch snap in the woods. Whatever was about to happen, some ancient part of me already knew the script. I'm washing them after my walk, I said, like always. Like always, she repeated, and there it was, the tone underneath the tone. Right, because everything in this house runs on your schedule. Within 90 seconds we were arguing. Within 5 minutes our daughter was in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, taking her mother's side, then abruptly switching to mine, then declaring she was sick of both of us. Within 10 minutes the dishes had disappeared from the conversation entirely. We were now arguing about a vacation from 11 years ago, then about my mother, then about whether my wife's sigh, the one she'd just sighed, was a sigh or a statement. If you've lived in a house like mine, you know exactly the argument I'm describing. It has no beginning you can identify and no end anyone agrees on. It's less like a disagreement and more like weather. It rolls in, it does its damage, and it rolls out, leaving everyone exhausted and nothing resolved. And here's the detail that haunted me that night, the one I couldn't shake during my walk, which I took anyway, 2 hours late in the dark. The dishes got washed. They got washed that night like every night. The stated problem was solved within the hour. And nobody felt any better. Think about how strange that is. In a normal disagreement, solving the problem ends the conflict. You disagree about directions, you check the map, it's over. But in my house, solving the stated problem never ended anything. The fight about the dishes would simply reappear next week wearing a different mask. The thermostat, the garage door, the way I said fine. The topics were interchangeable, disposable even. And it took me an embarrassingly long time to ask the obvious question: if the topic of an argument can be swapped out for any other topic without changing the argument at all, then what is the argument actually about? Here's the moment everything shifted for me. A few weeks after the sponge incident, I started keeping a notebook. Not a diary, a log. Every argument I wrote down 3 things: the topic, what happened just before it, and what happened just after. 3 months of data, and when I read it back, the topics told me nothing. Dishes, thermostat, tone, dishes again, noise. But the before column told me everything. The arguments came after closeness, after the good dinners, after the weekend we actually enjoyed together. After our daughter and her mother spent a whole afternoon laughing in the garden. Connection, then detonation, over and over like a rhythm. Psychologists have a name for what I was looking at. It's called proxy conflict, and it rests on a distinction that, once you see it, you cannot unsee. The difference between the content of an argument and the process underneath it. The content is the dishes. The process is everything the dishes are standing in for. "So you're just leaving those there" was never a sentence about plates. Translated out of its disguise, it meant something closer to, "I felt close to you at dinner, and I don't trust that feeling, and I need to know you'll still respond to me when I'm not being pleasant." Or maybe, "I do everything invisible in this house, and I'm afraid that means I'm invisible too." But nobody in my family, not my wife, not me, not our daughter, had ever learned how to say a sentence like that out loud. Sentences like that are vulnerable. They can be rejected. They can be laughed at. In the families we each grew up in, sentences like that were dangerous. Dishes, though, dishes are safe. You can fight about dishes forever without ever once risking the real sentence. That's the reveal. The trivial argument isn't a failure to communicate. It's a substitute for communication, a container small enough to feel safe and sturdy enough to carry emotions no one is allowed to name. It was never about the dishes. It was about everything the dishes were protecting us from saying. But this raises a harder question, and this is where it gets genuinely fascinating. Why would a family choose conflict as its container? Why not silence? Why not distance? Why does the unspoken emotion come out as a fight about nothing on what almost looks like a schedule? There are 3 pieces to this, and each one explained a different room of my house. The first piece comes from family systems thinking. Therapists who study families noticed something counterintuitive decades ago. Families behave like thermostats, not the one we argued about, a metaphorical one. Every family system has a setting, a level of emotional intensity it considers normal, and the system works constantly to return to that setting. They call this homeostasis. Here's the unsettling part. If a family's normal setting is chaos, if conflict is the temperature everyone grew up at, then peace registers as a deviation. Calm feels wrong, not consciously. Nobody in my house ever thought, "It's been quiet too long, better start a fight." But underneath awareness, a peaceful stretch created a strange, mounting discomfort, like a held breath. And someone would find the dishes, or the tone, or the thermostat, and exhale the tension the only way the system knew how. It rotated. Sometimes it was my wife, sometimes our daughter, and yes, sometimes it was me. That was my notebook pattern. Closeness raised the emotional stakes. Raised stakes created anxiety, and the argument, strangely, relieved it. The fight wasn't the system breaking. The fight was the system working, returning the house to its familiar temperature. The second piece comes from attachment research, and this one was harder for me to accept because it implicated me. Researchers who study how children bond with caregivers found that when a child can't get comfort through ordinary bids, a question, a reach, a look at me, the child escalates. Crying becomes screaming, reaching becomes grabbing. They call it protest behavior. And its logic is brutal and simple. A negative response is still a response. Being fought with is still being seen. The only unbearable outcome is no response at all. Children who grow up on that logic become adults who run on it. And a marriage between 2 people who run on it becomes a machine for manufacturing conflict. "So you're just leaving those there" was a bid for connection, an inverted, armored, backwards bid, but a bid. And my cold, clipped "I'm washing them after my walk" was a door closing. So the bid escalated, and I escalated back. And our daughter, raised inside that machine, learned that the way this family touches each other is by colliding. Negative intimacy is still intimacy. That sentence explained 20 years of my life. We weren't fighting despite wanting closeness. We were fighting because fighting was the only closeness that felt available. The third piece is biological. Your nervous system is a prediction machine, live long enough in unpredictable conflict, and your body stops asking whether the explosion is coming and starts asking when. Stress hormones stay half elevated all the time, an idle engine that never fully shuts off. Researchers sometimes describe people in chronic conflict as hypervigilant, scanning faces, decoding sighs, hearing footsteps as forecasts. And hypervigilance has a cruel arithmetic. Waiting for the explosion is often more painful than the explosion itself. The fight at least ends the dread, which means a person can be genuinely miserable in conflict and still, beneath awareness, feel relief when it finally arrives. Some clinicians loosely call this conflict addiction, though it isn't pleasure-seeking at all. It's dread-ending. Now stack all three: a system that treats chaos as its normal temperature, three people whose deepest bids for connection come out as attacks, and three nervous systems that experience calm as suspense. That is a family that argues about nothing. Except, of course, it was never nothing. So let's go back to that Sunday kitchen, same 6 words, same dishes, and watch the entire scene transform. So you're just leaving those there. Before, I heard an accusation about plates, and I defended myself about plates, and we descended together into the fog. But run it through everything we now know, and the scene is almost unbearably different. A woman who had just experienced a rare moment of family warmth at dinner, warmth that her own upbringing taught her never lasts, feels the closeness curdle into anxiety the moment it ends. She doesn't have words for "please don't let this feeling disappear." No one ever gave her those words, so her system reaches for the nearest safe container: the dishes. A man-me whose entire childhood strategy was to go quiet and get out of the house when voices sharpened, hears the preloaded tone and executes the only move he knows: withdraw, flat voice, jacket, door, which, to a person whose deepest terror is not mattering, reads as confirmation: escalate. And in the doorway, a young woman who grew up watching all of this, entering the fight because in this family, the fight is where the belonging is. 3 people each reaching for connection with the only tools they were ever handed, producing the exact opposite of connection. Nobody villainous, nobody healthy, everyone trapped. Here's what this understanding changes, and I want to be precise, because it does not change what you might expect. It didn't make the argument stop overnight. It didn't make my wife suddenly fluent in vulnerability, and it didn't make me stop flinching at a certain tone. What it changed was the meaning of the moment. The next time those 6 words came, I heard 2 channels at once: the content, dishes, and the process, reassure me. And a person who can hear both channels has a choice that a person who hears only one channel does not. For the first time in 20 years, I could answer the real question instead of defending against the fake one. So let me give you the tools, the specific ones, not communicate better, the actual moves. First, in the moment, refuse the content, not the person. The trap is arguing about the dishes because the dishes are unwinnable, they were never the point. The exit is naming the process gently without diagnosis. It sounds like this: I don't think we're really fighting about dishes. Something about tonight didn't sit right, I'd rather hear that. Notice what that sentence does. It doesn't accuse, it doesn't analyze the other person. It just declines the costume and invites the real thing. Sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't. But every time you say it, you stop feeding the proxy. Second, learn to answer the bid underneath the attack. When the opening line is hostile but the stakes are trivial, try, once, responding to what it might really be asking. So you're just leaving those there can be answered with "I'll do them now, hey, that was a really good dinner." You are not rewarding the hostility. You are starving it by proving the connection was available without the fight. If the hostility continues past that, you disengage, which brings us to the third tool. Third, set boundaries on the process, not the topic. A healthy boundary is not "we will never disagree about chores." It's "I'm willing to talk about anything, but I won't be talked to like an enemy. If this turns into that, I'm going to step away and we can pick it up in an hour." And then, this is the entire boundary. You actually step away calmly, and you actually come back. A boundary announced but not kept is just another move in the fight. Fourth, watch for the calm discomfort signal in yourself. After a genuinely good day, notice if you feel a strange itch, a scanning, a suspicion, an urge to check whether something's wrong. That itch is your nervous system mistaking peace for suspense. You don't have to obey it. Name it silently: "This is just my alarm system, not an actual alarm." Breathe and let the calm be calm. Every time you tolerate peace without detonating it, you are literally retraining your family's thermostat. Fifth, stop expecting solved topics to end fights. If resolving the stated issue never brings relief, take that as data, not defeat. It's the clearest sign you're in a proxy conflict, and your effort belongs at the process level, not the content level. None of this requires the other people in your house to change first. That's the point. You can't control whether someone hands you a costume, you control whether you put it on. It's been a while now since the sponge argument. We still have dishes in our sink. We still, sometimes, have arguments. I won't pretend otherwise, because this channel isn't about pretending. But something fundamental is different, and it's this: the arguments have gotten honest. Shorter, quieter, and about what they're actually about. It turns out the real conversations, the vulnerable ones we spent 20 years avoiding, take about 10 minutes. The proxy wars we fought to avoid them took decades. That's the observation I want to leave you with. Every family that argues about nothing is a family full of people trying to say something. The tragedy was never the fighting. The tragedy is how close the real sentence always was, sitting right there under the dishes, and how much cheaper it would have been to say it. The next time a fight about nothing starts in your house, get quiet inside for 1 second and ask yourself the only question that matters. What is this argument protecting us from saying? Answer that, and the chaos starts to untangle. If this found you at the right time, subscribe. Every week, we take another pattern apart. Until then, understand the chaos, break the pattern.